we can finish talking up about games that we like that angered us. We can stop bitching for a second. Let's talk about some of our favorites
Yeah, that's
and
a
why.
more positive tone.
Let's get
for
to
the
some of our
podcast.
favorites. So I ask you first. What's your favorite game? And it's gonna be a game that isn't necessarily your favorite to play, but like you feel that kind of shaped you as a person or upped your standards for how games could or should be, or just a game you have fond memories of.
Well, as I hinted at earlier, we're going to begin with The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, which was the game that officially made me fall in love with video games. Like, Ocarina of Time was the one that made me realize that, yeah, I definitely am going to be a gamer, but Majora's Mask was the one that just made me like, oh, games can do more than just be entertaining. Because as there's a YouTube channel called The Completionist. He reviews video games. He completes them. I believe. Do you know about The Completionist, Evan?
Would you storm off angrily if I said no?
Not really.
Okay, then no.
Okay, so as I said, he reviews video games by completing them 100%, like how blah, blah, blah. And his episode of Majora's Mask, the most recent episode he did, because he did like a review, his like first like 100 reviews, redo them kind of situation, like looking back at them. And he described Majora's Mask as being the yin and yang of hope and pain.
Ooh,
And that is a very good way to describe this game, because it's not a happy game. No, not at all. It's very dark, very deals with a lot of adult themes like death and loss and what a person's going through and all that stuff. And just the overall tone is just very dreadful but very hopeful at the same time. So that how the completion described the game was just a like perfect representation of the game. Now for me, I am very much driven by like music in video games. And the soundtrack of Majora's Mask is all over the place, both good and bad. I'm not going to say it's all perfect because I don't believe in perfect.
So you're saying it's some skips on that album?
There's maybe like 2 to 3.
They could have kept a couple of the tracks.
Yeah. for example, the actual like title track theme is one of my favorite like title track themes. Like you're just sitting there on the screen and it's just like I can vibe to this. And then the theme of Majora himself, the mask itself, is just very just dark and just like, oh my, this is menacing. This is terrifying. What is this going to be? What is this thing going to do to us in the world? What is it going to just do to the world in general? And then you go into the hub world of the game, Clock Tower, because it takes place not in Hyrule, which almost every other Zelda has taken place in. It takes place in this world called Termina. For those who haven't experienced this 21-year-old game now at this point, it is...
Hey, Xbox Game Pass is out. There's no excuse anymore.
If I
Greatest deal in games. Play it.
Only $10 a month. Do it. Now,
also, Microsoft, pay me.
now, this game, takes place on a 3-day cycle where the world of Termina itself is just going to get crushed by a falling moon with a face that only a mother could love. It literally has a moon with a face on it, just staring down at you the entire time. You have 3 days to beat this. Well, you can continually go back, loop through time, but you live this 3-day cycle over and over and over, completing side quests, obtaining different masks, because masks are the main theme of this game. And like you get certain powers, like one is like a bunny ears, makes you run faster. But most of them revolve around the different side quests.
I thought this game was super deep and serious. You mean to tell me bunny ears?
It's still a Zelda game. It has its moments.
Okay.
Now, but like experiencing the different side quests, like a good example is what I could just call it the Romani side quest, which involves aliens. I'll get into it in a moment. Now, you're going to this ranch. This little girl, she's like, "Oh, you need to help me fight them." And you're just like, "What is them? What are you talking about, little girl? What is them?" You talk to her older sister who's running the ranch. It's just her and her sister. The theme's another beautiful thing because it's a play on one of the songs from Ocarina of Time, Epona's song, which is the horse. And then you learn by completing the side quest that aliens are there abducting their cows, and you have to fight the aliens so they don't abduct the cows or the little girl herself. Because if you don't do the side quest, you go back on the 3rd day, the older sister is found in the barn just like crying, sobbing, if I'm remembering this correctly, and they actually abducted the little girl and she's gone. Which Aliens in the Legend of Zelda game just like blew my mind as a kid. I was like, what is this? Oh my God, aliens!
That seems like a thing that's very different.
I know. Like this game is weird also. Did I mention that?
Yeah.
Now, one of the other side quests They're
So how does the side quest end with saving the kid? Like, how does that
if you actually complete
affect
it, you stop the aliens from you stop the aliens. Oh, so we're going. You stop the aliens from taking over taking the cows, and you just save the ranch basically. And then you wind up getting that specific mask for that specific mission. Check it off in your little you get like a little notebook that lists like, oh, this character, this side quest, you get this, blah 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 blah. But the main side quest of this game involves around basically saving a marriage, which I know it's weird thinking about it. But basically you spend all 3 days doing this, and this. You have to do it in a specific order to complete this side quest, and you just get another mask out of it. But the concept of the story is like the man in the marriage, he got transformed by the Skull Kid who was wearing Majora's mask. He's the villain of the game the entire time. And he transformed this guy into like a little child, basically. Like he's just the size of a little kid. And he's just ran away from the marriage because he doesn't want his soon-to-be wife to see him as that. Because he's like, how can you love blah, blah, blah. But by the end of it, she's like, oh, I love you for how you are. And I'll love you even though we're about to die in like 5 minutes. Because the end of that side quest ends with like 4 minutes left to go before the game's over from the world dying from the moon. So it's basically like it's better.
You've given me a lot of themes, and I don't know which follow-up question to ask because I have like 90.
There's a lot of like death, grief, getting over, just like fear and all that stuff. And just like I said, basically death and hope.
So it gave you lessons that stuck with you then?
Yes, absolutely. Just made me because you definitely help out a lot of people in this world. Like it's more side quests than actual like main game like this because there's only 4 dungeons. There's only 4 regions. You complete those dungeons, then you do the thing, fight Majora, you win. Now, so it's mostly side quests than anything else, and you get to learn these characters more than you would any other Zelda game. You get behind them. You're just like, I want to help these people, and it's like that game definitely made me want to help people more out than anything else. So it made me a better person in that aspect for sure.
Oh, that's
deep.
And
it didn't
that's
make
nice.
me, and I totally didn't like dark themes because of that game or anything at all. No. I totally don't have a statue of it in my apartment.
Dark themes? No. You hate those.
Not at all.
You hate dark music too, as far as I've heard.
No, what do you mean? No. Totally don't have a giant metal playlist on my phone, every phone I have. But no, Majora's Mask is by far like my personal favorite. Like I will wind up with the mask tattooed on me somewhere at some point. Probably my face itself. Just kidding.
Okay.
I would never.
Your face is the whole mask.
Literally. I'll just walk around just like, ooh.
I got one for you. And you're going to see this coming a mile away. My favorite game of all time. Kingdom Hearts 1. Kingdom Hearts 1. Because it's just a completely, nearly perfect game, to be honest with you. Like, I just love the game. I'm trying to put my thoughts together.
And it was different for its time. Like no one was
significantly so.
Like you said earlier, combining Disney with Square Enix.
Yeah.
Just like, whoa.
Put Disney together with Final Fantasy. And on the surface, it seems cheesy. Just you have this little kid run around with Donald and Goofy across all these worlds, and all they do is...
My friends are my power.
And oh my God, that's the speeches of that game are so cheesy. And that's why I think I didn't like 3 towards the end of it, because I've heard for 2 games straight, I love friends. We will never forget each other, blah, blah, blah. Like in the first game... I think why I like it so much, and here's a good barometer, I think, is the best compliment I can give a game or a show is that it just makes sense. Like Kingdom Hearts is a game where, of course, there's other worlds out there. You go fight alongside other Disney characters, and the big evil is the Heartless who just seek to just eat everything and become the only darkness. Oh, my dog scared me. Jumped right up on my leg.
He's like, hello.
Yeah, which makes sense because, that's why you would go to every Disney World and try to go save it, right? It just makes sense. And then as you bounce from Disney World to Disney World, they each give you a lesson that they learned in their own individual world, which just makes sense. And as you go from world to world, you learn about friendship, you learn about communicating with other people, and the best part about that is all the Disney villains, they each all have a fight to where they're all mechanical. Because before, like, you have to really pay attention and counterattack correctly and defend and retreat and then go in. So even though the gameplay is limited to where Sora just takes this Keyblade and goes, ha, hoo, ha, the whole game, you actually have to do fire. I hate you for that so much. Like, you actually have to think. And that was different for me prior because every game I've played, you could just go up, button mash, and you pretty much would be all right. But the narrative of that game just links everything together in a way that just feels satisfying towards the end because as you're fighting Disney villains, you're not just going to the world for the fan service. Like, you don't go to Agrabah just to go beat up Jafar because it's fun. Like, all the Disney villains link up because that's just what, it makes sense they would do. Maleficent would meet with Jafar and Oogie Boogie and Ursula and say, hey, we can use these Heartless. And then you find out the big Heartless that has Kingdom Hearts where all the captive hearts go. The lore behind it is excellent. Like, the game, so it's such a, let me walk that back. The biggest compliment I can give it with it just making sense is that there's so much lore behind it that you don't need to know any of it to appreciate how big and grand the game really is. And it really upped my, I guess, standards because now I expect every narrative to engage me the way Kingdom Hearts did. And the best part about it is that even though it's not open world, it's like semi where they just have multiple levels of like the same room over and over. It's very Japanese role-playing game in the fact that it just looks at you and says, oh, no, fucking figure it out. There's a couple times in the game where it's like follow Tarzan or find Goofy or open the door. And you're like, hey, game, how would I do that? Let me just check the journal that one of my characters has been opening all game and writing in. Let me see what they would say. And he'd be like, well, follow Tarzan. I'm like, oh, where? It's like, well, the gorillas. Where? They there. They're in the jungle. You're like, the whole planet's a jungle. It's like, well, fucking figure it out.
Yeah, you're running around each area, deep jungle. Where is these gorillas? Sabor just jumps out of nowhere, randomly starts attacking. You're like, where'd you come from?
It is so satisfying to finally figure out where the gorillas are. That's why I hated Deep Jungle. But then I found it, and I'm like, the boss fight at the end of that one made me feel pretty good. But that it's something to be said because, like I told you earlier, Pokemon, like Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Red and Blue are my favorite games because there's times where they just don't hold your hand at all. Like, they just say, go do it. And there are times where that's restrictive and you're just like, I don't know what I need to do to figure this out. But then there are other times where, like, they'll put a couple cities in front of you, they'll put a couple bosses, a couple worlds in front of you and just say, all right, you're good. We gave you the freedom in the other world and you didn't like it. Now you have the freedom to go pick which world you want to not like. So I wouldn't really say it's the theme with me. It's just the fact that I love single-player games for the story. And the replayability of Kingdom Hearts 1 just keeps me coming back. Like, even though the combat itself is very limited, like, the story of it just feels satisfying because you go through all the worlds, you help all the worlds out, and you're Sora, and you need to help yourself by finding your friends. And then to find out your friends succumbed to the darkness, your other friend lost her heart, then the whole Princesses of Heart, which are the Disney princesses, again, just makes sense. And then you fight Maleficent. That dragon bitch was annoying. But then it was just such a good game because from start, middle, end, everything just flowed together like seamlessly. And I'm sure I've been talking way too fast, so you might want to watch this at like minus, like at 0.75 speed. But it really made me like look at the games I play, just like, is this good? Because it's just flashy. You know what I'm saying? Because like a lot of games, they just throw a bunch of action scenes in there and just like, yeah, be entertained. You're like, ah.